Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavai Rananati Kaivartaka Keshava Parasharya Vacha Saroja Mamalam Gitartha Gandhodkatam Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadai Raharaha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvangsina Shreyase Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Maruta Stunvanti Divyai Stavair Vedai Sangapada Kramopanishadair Gayanti Yah Samagaha Dhyana Avasthita Tadgatena Manasa Vashyanti yang yogino Yasyantang navidu sura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narotamam Deving saraswating vyasam Tato jayam mudirayet. Okay, we can read the English translation. Just gonna go around in a circle. Meditation on Sri Gita. O Bhagavad-Gita, song of the Supreme Lord Himself. You are the bestower of Arjuna's enlightenment. You have been woven into the scripture Mahabharata by the ancient sage Srila Vyasadeva. In 18 chapters, you are the rain of ever-flowing nectar, non-different from the Lord. O Mother, I meditate upon you. May you graciously enter my heart.
O Srila Vyasadeva, of formidable intelligence, whose eyes resemble the long petals of the blooming lotus flower, and who ignited the lamp of knowledge, filled with the oil of the Mahabharata, I offer my obeisances unto you.
I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who fulfills the wishes of his surrendered devotees. He holds a driving rod in one hand, while the other is poised in the expression of instruction, and he is the milker of the nectar of the Gita.
The crest jewels of the Vedas, the Upanishads, are as the cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Shri Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Arjuna is the cow, the nectar of the Gita is the milk. The fortunate devotees are the enjoyers of that milk.
Obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna. I bow unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, the vanquisher of the demons Kamsa and Chamura, the joy of Mother Devaki, and the universal teacher.
Can I just comment on the glories of the Gita, that Sarva Upanishado Gava, which means the crushed jewel of the Vedas, the Upanishads are the cow, the milker of the cow is Krishna. Like a very beautiful analogy where, there's a huge body of Vedas, the Upanishads, and they're like the cow, but what is the milk of the cow? That's the Gita. So all condensed into its most nutritious form. And then in order for there to be milk from the cow, there has to be a calf. It means there has to be some necessity. There has to be a disciple with a need, with a question. And that's Arjuna is the calf. And always, one of the beautiful things about Mother Cow is that she always makes more milk than her baby needs. And so, because Arjuna is in need of the milk, Krishna is bringing the milk, but then there's always more milk. And so we're all benefited by that. So very beautiful shloka. Okay, the next page. One bank is Bhishma, the other Dronacharya. Jayadratha is the water, the sons of Gandhari, the blue lotus flower. Shalya the crocodile, Kripa the waves, Karna the shore, Ashwatthama, Vikarna and company, the fearful sharks. Duryodhana the whirlpool, and Keshava is the boatman of this river of the battle that was crossed by the Pandavas. As you read Mahabharata, all these names, they're all very interesting characters in the whole story.
The Mahabharata as a lotus flower These words of Sri Krishna Dvayapayana Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara Muni, are a perfect lotus flower. The meaning of the Gita is the beautiful fragrance of this lotus. The various episodes are its stamens, and the enlightening narrations about the Supreme Lord are its nectar. In this world, the pure devotees are the bees who day after day delight in drinking the nectar of the lotus flower. May this Mahabharata lotus, the vanquisher of all evils in this age of Kali, graciously bestow auspiciousness upon us.
Obeisances unto the Supreme Lord. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, whose glories are sung with celestial prayers by the gods Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, and the Maruts, whose glories are sung by the verses of the Vedas, along with their 6 auxiliary books, and the Upanishads, whose glories are, sorry, my pronunciation is...
It's all good. It's all good.
Whose glories are sung by the Brahmanas that sing the Samaveda, who the yogis see within their hearts absorbed in meditation, and whose infinite glories are inconceivable to all beings, whether gods or demons. Before reciting the scriptures, they can conquer material existence. We offer obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, who is known as Narayana,
Narayana.
Nara, and Narottama, the goddess of learning, Saraswati, and the great sage empowered by the Lord to reveal the scriptures, Srila Vyasadeva.
Okay, great Sanskrit. So, okay, so that's the worship of the Gita, and now we can begin chapter 18 on page 294. Hare Krishna. So this is the final chapter, Moksha Yoga. Moksha means liberation or freedom. So the actual culminating instructions. And Sybil, you're kind of jumping in right at the very end here. But we go through beginning to the end. We're starting right.
That's
right
okay.
again.
I like this. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
And it's been an amazing journey. It always is an amazing journey to get to this chapter. One of the wonderful things about this chapter is there's a little bit of a summary of some of the things that have come before it. So there's some, kind of recap almost by Lord Krishna as he's discussing with Arjuna. But the journey is through many different layers of perception of reality. If I could just take a second. One of the key concepts of the Gita is that you're living in a world of your own perception. The world that you live in is your world. It's your viewpoint, your own perception of reality. It's not reality, but it's the reality that you live in, because it's the reality of your mind and your perception of the world. And Krishna takes Arjuna through many different, you can say almost hierarchies of perception of reality. Most people are animalistic, and there's this sort of like, I have needs and I'm going to fulfill my needs. That's like one way to interact with reality. It's not very deep, it's very instinctive, it's very reactive. I'm hungry, I eat, kind of life. And that's a particular way of interacting with reality. There's deeper ways of interacting with reality. Do you have a duty? Do you have something to do for others, right? Now you're living in a little bit of a different world. What is reality? What's permanent? It doesn't take very much thought to look out at the world around me and go, all of this is temporary. Like it's all literally just a flickering of energy. And it's energy taking shape for a couple of minutes, a couple of years, a couple of decades, maybe a couple centuries. Most things don't last for much longer than that, right? And then it's going to dissipate and take a different shape. So it's just a flickering of energy. So then you think, well, what is actually real, right? And Krishna tells Arjuna, you have to think in terms of sat, which means truth, but the same word in Sanskrit also means eternal. The word sat means truth and eternal. So if something's not eternal, it shouldn't be thought of as sat, right? And then there's asat, and the asat is that which is not eternal. So there's flickering reality, and then there's actual things that are lasting. And what's ultimately lasting? Consciousness, the soul. So you have to look at what is conscious and look at what is flickering, right? And you have to start to view reality in that different way. And then if you are something that is eternal, which Krishna says to Arjuna immediately, then what is your eternal relationship with the eternal things within reality? That becomes the major question of the book, right? You're eternal. You're in a flickering reality that's not eternal, and how do you actually interact with that? And that process of interaction, that process of connection is called yoga. So then all the chapters of yoga begin. This yoga, that yoga, this yoga, that yoga, this yoga, that yoga, right? Which also have their own hierarchy. So that's enough of that. Many, many details, many, many layers of perception have been gone through at this point. And remember, this is happening in a very, very intense situation. Arjuna is about to go into a battle that he does not want to fight. So his questions are very intense, and they're very practical in terms of, what do I do right now? This war is about to happen, and I am being pulled into it. So what do I do right now? So it's very also translating into, even though there's all this huge picture, you still have your life that's right in front of you that you now have to interact with properly, right? That all comes down to some practical interaction within this great paradigm. Okay, so we can read together the shlokas of Gita. We always read the Sanskrit because we try to maintain connection to the words that were actually spoken. And it's one of the ancient principles of Vedic societies that the words themselves contain their meaning. And by praying to those words, you may receive some light from them. The sound is containing what the sound wants to communicate. That's the principle of mantra. Okay. Arjuna uvacha sanyasasya mahabaho tadvam ichhami veditum tyagasya cha hrishikesha pritakeshi nisudana Shri Bhagavan uvacha kamyanam karmanam nyasam sannyasam kavayo vidu sarva karma phala tyagam rahustyagam vichakshana tyajyam doshavad ityeke karma prahur manishina yagyadana tapah karma natyajyam iti chapare. Arjuna said, O Almighty Lord, slayer of the demon Keshi, I wish to understand the subject of renunciation, sannyasa, and detachment, tyaga, separately. The Supreme Lord said, learned, enlightened persons know the giving up of fruitive action as renunciation, and the giving up of the fruits of all action as detachment. Some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. Okay, so this concept was actually covered previously in the Gita to a certain extent. But there's kind of two approaches of going forward, because action, another important concept in Sanskrit is karma. And what's very interesting about the word karma is that karma means action, And karma also means reaction. So you cannot, in that culture, you cannot say the word action without also saying reaction. It's like embedded in the communication. So what the question here is do you stop action in order to be free of reaction? Or do you stop the attachment for the fruits of your action? Meaning, I'm only doing this because I want to get something for myself, right? So that's Arjuna's question here. Should you stop action or should you become unattached to the fruits of action? So Krishna says, well, some people said action should be stopped. Some people say you should never stop actions that are charity. Should never stop actions that are sacrifice. Should never stop actions that are austerity. Meaning, those are all actions that are good. Okay, so, verse 4. Nishtayam shrinu me tatra tyage bharata sattama tyago hi purusha vyaghra trividha samprakirtitaha yagyadana tapah karma na tyajyam karyameva tat yagyo danam tapaschaiva avanani manishinam etanyapi tu karmani sangam tyakva phalani cha kartavyani time partha nishchitam matam uttamam.
O best of the Bharatas, your my perfect conclusion concerning detachment, the quality of renunciation, since, O best of men, it has been clearly established that the quality of renunciation is of three types. Actions of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned. They must be performed, for they are purifiers of the wise. But even these actions must be performed abandoning attachment and fruitive desires. O Partha, know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion.
Okay? So this is a very deep thing that Krishna is saying. What's the ultimate conclusion? You should not give up action. You're here to contribute something. So we live in this world and we can philosophically see, okay, all of this is temporary and even my body is temporary. So like what? What am I to do? And Krishna is saying, no, you have something to do. You have something to give, and you should never abandon austerity, charity, and sacrifice.
What does austerity mean?
Austerity in Sanskrit the word is tapa, and it's so all throughout this we have to always constantly remind ourselves: translation is approximation, right? It's not exactly. We're trying to kind of surround what that word means with other words, but the word that tapa is often translated as burn. Okay, but the word that's used in English is austerity, and austerity means to voluntarily undergo some difficulty. Right? Do hard things, in other words.
Okay.
You can say. And in yoga, there's very developed austerities by which you can voluntarily do difficult things, and you receive these different, what are called siddhis, meaning these perfections by people who are great at doing austerities. Even now, if you go up deep into the Himalayas, you can see people performing austerities, performing tapasya in a regimented way. And they become very powerful. I mean, like I've seen people literally sit in ice melt from a glacier in the Himalayas for like hours, which is impossible scientifically. Okay, but they do it because they've been doing tapasya for so long, and now their prana and their air and their regulation of their life airs and their heat and everything, they've mastered that by the practice of austerity. I mean, it actually, for real, like even now, even in today in modern India, you can see people doing like things that are like, but that's impossible, but they're doing it. So that's like a type of organized austerity. But the principle, I mean, even you could say modern day psychologists are saying something like this, where they're like, look, be uncomfortable, do hard things. Like, you're going to be happier that way. And you're going to be totally unhappy if you don't, right? That's the principle, right? Do some tapasya, do tapa, do austerity. So Krishna's saying this. You have to sacrifice, you have to give, and you have to do hard things. And through that, you will be satisfied. And you should never stop doing it. So that's Krishna's answer. And tapa, I like the word burn too, because sometimes you can feel when you're doing something hard and it starts burning and you're like, no, I don't want this. And then you got to kind of like keep going right through the fire, right? Hare Krishna. Okay, so very deep idea, Krishna's saying. In that question, no, you don't abandon the world. You don't stop acting. You act with sacrifice, austerity, and charity. Verse 7. Niyatasya tu sannyasa karmano no papadyate mohatasya parityagas tamasa parikirtitaha dukham nityeva yad karma kaya klesha bhayatyajet sakritva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labhe karyam nityeva yad karma niyatam kriyate arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva satyaga sapiko mataha.
Renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation, or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. One who abandons his obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus, he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. O Arjuna, performance of obligatory works as a matter of duty, while abandoning attachment and fruit of desire, is renunciation of the nature of goodness. This is my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So, some beautiful guidance by Krishna. If you abandon what you're supposed to do, what you're obligated to do. In the society that Krishna is speaking this in, it's a very organized society where you have some job to do to contribute to the society. In our society, it's a little bit more open-ended. But at the same time, we have things that we know that we need to do. And Krishna's saying, if you have some obligation, maybe you're responsible for someone, whatever it might be, right? You need to carry out that obligation. And if you renounce that in some, idea of like, this is just something I don't want to do. Krishna's saying that is a type of renunciation, but it's a renunciation in ignorance. Don't abandon the things that you have obligations toward. Then the second is, this is hard. This is uncomfortable. I don't like doing this, right? And then you might convince yourself, I'm out of here, right? That's also a type of renunciation, what Krishna's saying. That's in the mode of passion. So renunciation in the mode of passion is it becomes difficult, and then your mind starts coming up with ideas of why you don't need to do that. But he says proper renunciation means you abandon your attachment to what you're going to get out of it, and you do your contribution. That's goodness. So there's, the Gita starts with this idea of karma yoga. What he's talking about there is karma yoga. The true perfection of karma yoga is to contribute, to give your energy, your talents, your time without attachment. Now that's a very steep hill to climb, but that's the beginning of the Gita. The beginning of the Gita is to make your actions a yoga. And the way that you make your actions a yoga is you give of your talents and your energy. Give.
But don't expect.
And don't expect. And you will not be the loser from that. And that's a very, very difficult thing. I mean, many times, you hear people are reading the Gita for the first time, and there's sort of an introduction in chapter 2 where Krishna explains you're a soul, you're not the body dies, the soul's eternal, right? Then, so that's a really actually nice knowledge to have, right? You're an eternal soul, you never die. These bodies get changed like you change clothes. So, okay, now you're thinking about something in a much bigger way. And then immediately, chapter 3, it's like, now just act without attachment to the result. It's like, wow! It's like, just goes right up a cliff. And that's the first yoga, karma yoga. Really high standard. But a beautiful idea of life. And what results in that is actual freedom in the conscious plane. And in the end, you don't lose from that because the results will come. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is to learn to give without attachment. Okay, verse 10. Nadveshtya kushalam karma kushale nanushajjate tyagi sattva samavishto medhavi chinna samshayah nahi deha brita shakyam tyaktum karmanyasheshatah yastu karma phala tyagi satyagi bhidiyate anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividham karmana phalam bhavatyattyaginam pretya natu sannyasinam kvachit.
Is it 9 or 10?
It's 10, 11, and 12.
The wise renunciate who is absorbed in the nature of goodness and who has slashed all doubts, neither resents disagreeable duties nor is attached to agreeable works. It is not possible for the embodied soul to fully renounce actions. However, one who renounces the fruits of his actions is a true renunciate. After death, the 3 kinds of fruits of actions, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced.
Okay. So that's the principle of karma yoga. When you act in karma yoga, meaning you act as a gift, you act in giving without attachment, then you don't accumulate a reaction from that. So, Krishna says this is only possible by someone who has no doubts. Why? Because the minute you start giving with the idea that I'm not going to get something back, you'll start to see your doubts creep in right away, right? We all have this instinct of like, yeah, but what's in it for me? And that's just immediately what we're going to think, right? So this is a great deep yoga. This is a great practice for our life, to move in this direction. And Krishna is saying ultimately those who can do that are free. They have disagreeable works, they're happy. They have agreeable works, they're happy. They're just giving. And if you want to live as a soul, you have to start to learn to give. Because you're a contributing unit. You're a participant in a great dance. But if you're always concerned that maybe you danced a little bit more than someone else, and you should have gotten a little bit more for your dancing than somebody else did, and whatever it is, you're stuck in suspicion, in fear, in small thinking. Very, very, very small world you start to inhabit with that consciousness. Our society, we're saying, hey, you're a winner. The more you do that, in fact, you're a super winner if you give nothing and get everything, right? That is the exact opposite of what this is saying. Give everything and don't care about what you get. Very, very high standard of life. Everything comes naturally. You have to have this plane of faith. And again, Shraddha means, in Sanskrit, it's translated as faith in English, but it means so much more than that. Shraddha means you're touching reality. It means you have an actual viewpoint of what's real. You have a connection in some degree to what's real. Shraddha, it means faith, but what it means is you actually are connected to the consciousness that is underlying everything with your consciousness. So it means an actual connection to what's real. That's what Shraddha means. So when you have some Shraddha, some faith, then you can give this. But otherwise you're going to be really taken over with doubts. Something difficult comes into life and you think, okay, I'm going to give to this. Ooh, you're gonna have to overcome some little, resistance inside yourself to do that. But that's the path of freedom, and that's the path to expand and to be a real practitioner of yoga.
Excuse me, Prabhu. I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually this morning we were reading Divine Guidance by Sri Govinda Maharaj. And he was saying that he's giving a warning that it's easy to get off track, especially when you don't know exactly what you want, like where you're at. So if you don't have that clear objective, and if you have bad fortune or because of your karma, you can get off the track. So that is like a warning and evidence that it's important to have an objective. So what is the difference between having a clear goal of what you want in life and not expecting anything back?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. And it's important that we all think about this. And if we've already thought about it, we need to think about it again, because we could start to lose track of ourselves. Life is an interesting thing. We all have different goals. And as we mature, our goals might be a little bit different, right? Like when everyone at school thinks you're cool because you can play basketball, what's your goal? Well, I want to be good at basketball or something, right? So then you might start waking up early and shooting jump shots in the morning, and eventually, hopefully, you'll be playing in front of people. People are like, "Oh my God, he's so good at basketball!" Right? That's your goal, and so you're going to start to organize your habits. You're going to start to organize your identity, right? How people perceive you, sort of outer identity, maybe how you dress, all around that, right? And I'm just giving an example. As you mature in life, or maybe if you're fortunate enough to actually be in the presence of a Vaishnava, a different goal might appear in your heart, right? A deeper goal. And there's, you're a living person, so you can have multiple goals at once, right? But there has to be a deeper goal that ultimately is what you're navigating around. So if you have a deep goal where you say, I want to become a loving unit, I want to be a bhakta, I want to actually be a participant, a giver to reality. Okay, that may be your deep goal. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to naturally start to create and maintain habits within yourself around that goal. And our teachers are giving us, okay, do this sadhana, do this sadhana, do this sadhana, right? Those are habits. Those are suggestions. Do these things, don't do these things, right? That's going to naturally be a part of your goal. Now your life is also going to happen. You're going to have, maybe you have a relationship that comes into your life, right? Maybe you have to go to work, right? And so you're going to think, well, I have this job, well, I'm going to do a good job at it. Well, now you have a secondary goal in your bigger goal. But that bigger goal has to color everything that you do. And when Gurudev was talking about getting off track, he's saying if you don't understand where you're going and where you want to go, it's like think of yourself as a ship in an ocean of waves. And if you don't know where you're going, a wave's going to come and blow you this way. But if you don't know that I need to go over there, you're not going to be able to steer back. It's just going to blow you that way. And then now you're that way, right? You don't have anything to steer around, right? Because where are you? Where are you going? You don't have any routing, right? So Sambandha Gyan means to understand where you are in relation to your goal. And when you have some type of Sambandha Gyan, then you can navigate, right? And you can see when you get blown off course. Or maybe somebody makes you angry and you do something stupid or whatever it is, right? Now you have something to judge yourself by, right? Now you have something to work on if you see something inside yourself that's keeping you from that goal. So the quality of your goal is such an important thing in life. Some people, I mean, I would say most people, and these are like maybe the most together people in our society. They have a goal around some type of accumulation. Okay? Some type of acquiring something, controlling it, and consuming it. Those are generally the goals in our society, right? And maybe they might have a number in mind, like I want to make $1 million, or I want to make 10 million, or I want to make 20 million. And that's going to navigate them. And guess what? They're going to start thinking bigger. If they have a goal for 20 million, they're going to think different if somebody who has a goal for 20,000, right? It's the same principle applies. But it's just, is your goal all within some little temporary thing of temporary selfish accumulation? Or is there an overriding principle that you're actually shooting for, right? An actually eternal principle for your eternal self and your eternal relationship with reality. So those are, those are different things. And when your eternal goal is your goal, then you can act a little bit differently in the world of your practical life, right? Because you might say, well, I have to take care of my family, so I think I should buy a house, right? And then you're reading Karma Yoga, and it's like, well, don't do anything for an outcome. And then you're like, okay, so how do I do this, all right? But guess what happens? Now something difficult happens in your job, and now you can't buy the house, or whatever, right? I'm just giving an example. Can you offer all that effort up to as a sacrifice to Krishna and be undisturbed and then go and give again? Maybe you still want to buy a house, but if you can offer that action and be okay with having expended that energy and not gotten the result that you want, then you're practicing karma yoga. Right? That's why it means, Krishna means, someone who has slashed all doubts can do this. Otherwise you have to move toward that, But there's a very, very deep practice of karma yoga. Guru Maharaj talks about this very much. This practice in life of dealing with difficulty, where you try for something and it doesn't happen, right? And how you can continue to go forward, but with a smile and not in disturbance. It means you have to willingly and happily give. Like willingly and happily give. And you're not going to be a loser from that. You're going to expand so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Is that in any way helpful? I mean, this is it's a very deep question on a deep topic. But the overarching spiritual goal has to be the overarching goal. It has to be. Otherwise you're just blown around by what occurs. And even really great business people, if you go to attend a business conference, what are they going to say? You can't control what happens, but you can control your reaction to it, right? You're going to hear that kind of stuff from Tony Robbins or somebody like that. Why are they saying that? What does that mean? It means you got to deal with that with a smile. You have to take it as a lesson and don't regret all the energy you put into it, right? And you got to keep moving forward, right? But they're going to be saying that and comes you got to get your goal, and what happens, and, everything went wrong, you got to keep going, because it's you do. What else are you going to do? But with a deeper spiritual purpose, it's not just about like, okay, well, I'm still going to get my house. You know, it's like, okay, I give that. Right? I'm happy that happened. I give it. And you can move forward in a very different way. The same motion forward, but in your consciousness, very, very different. And we're also on a journey that Krishna's already outlined also in the Gita, to understand that consciousness is reality, not matter. You can just hear that. You might not even have any idea what that means right now. But you have to hear it because it's actually the truth. Matter comes from consciousness, not the other way around. So now, if you know that you're a conscious unit that is learning how to contribute and give, that's the only real thing that's happening. Everything else is happening in a world of phenomena. Okay, let's stop talking about it. Any other thoughts on that?
No, it was really helpful, especially how you consider the nuances. Right?
Consider what?
The nuances. Like that there are secondary goals and everything.
You know, we're all living a life. You know, there's not one of us that doesn't have something to do during the day and, bill to pay or all these kinds of things, right? So we have to try to practice this yoga in the context of our actual life, not in the idea that you have to withdraw. And Krishna's saying that. You don't withdraw from the obligations you have, right? You have to do this in the context of your actual life. And Devancha's life is different than my life, is different than Rupa's life, is different than Sybil's life. Everybody has a different life, and we all at the same time have to practice this. Okay. Then verse
13.
Panchayitani mahabahu karanani nibodhame sankhe kritante proktani siddhaye sarvakarmanam adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha prithak vidham vividhascha prithak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam sharira vanmano viryat karma prarabhate nara nyayam va viparitam va panchaite tasya hetavah.
O mighty hero, know from me of the 5 causes of the accomplishment of all actions as described in the conclusive teachings of the scripture known as Sakya or Vedanta. All actions are accomplished for the 5 causes: the body, the performer, ego, a note of spirit and matter, the instrument, the senses, the various endeavors, and the divine, the super soul. Whether lawful or unlawful, whether action a man performs with his body, mind, or speech, is caused by these 5 elements. That's where we stopped, right? 15.
Yeah.
So it means like that we have like 5 different meanings that can lead for some action, right? Like different levels of consciousness, like chakras, from where we act.
Yeah, this is again a recap, but Krishna's basically saying, don't see yourself only as the doer. There's a lot of things that need to come together in order for an action to actually occur. Your body has to work. There's you, who's the wanter of the action, right? That's your ego, your soul tied with this body. The senses that you're perceiving the world around you with, they also have to work for that action to occur. You don't necessarily control very well. I mean, there's thousands of experiments that show how unreliable your senses are.
And they can also be a cause of action, right?
Well, what he's saying is all of these 5 causes need to occur for the action to occur, right? And then there's, divine consciousness, the super soul. There also has to be some sanction from the divine. So all these things come together for any action to occur. So you shouldn't only see yourself as, I'm causing this. There's a lot of stuff that needs to come together in order for that thing to occur. And that's a healthy viewpoint. It's not just that I'm causing it, that there's a synchronicity between a lot of different elements that needs to occur for an action to occur. And, if you ever studied quantum physics, it gets even more intimidating, because the number of synchronicities that need to occur on a second-by-second basis for like your fingernail to exist is like inconceivable. Right? There needs to just be this agreement between these waves of potential that are manifesting into some form, right? To some particle that is constantly occurring, this re-agreement. And when you really get into quantum physics, it's like everything's impossible, but yet everything's happening. And so you have to, as you interact with your world, know this, right? You're not the only thing that's acting within the world. Okay, 16. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuya pashyatya krita bhuditvan nasapashyati durmatihi yasya naham krito bhavo buddhir yasya nalipyate hatvapi sa imalokan nahanti na nibadhyate jnanam gyeyam parigyata trividha karma chodana karanam karma karteti trividha karma sangraha.
But an ignorant person who sees only himself as the doer does not actually see, due to his impure intelligence. He who is free from egoism, aversion to the absolute, and whose intelligence is not implicated in worldly action, even if he kills the entire world, he neither kills nor is he bound by the action. These 3 are the driving force of action: knowledge, the knowable, and the knower. These 3 are the constitution of action, the instrument, the action, and the performer.
This is all part of Sankhya. These are well-defined principles. And these are very, very deep. You cannot find this in any type of philosophy. And, I was a philosophy minor. I've read many thousands of pages of philosophy. And this is very, very, very clearly laid out. All these things, knowledge, the knowable and the knower, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, those are the driving forces of action. But actually, when you get deep into it, and you understand how limited our knowledge is, right? And what it is that's knowable to us, and how that is what's driving our action, this tiny little sliver that we live in, right? It's actually super deep to say this. What you know, what is possible for you to know, and who is the thing that's knowing it, that's what's driving what you do. Because you're living in the little sphere of your own perception, and that's what's driving you. So you're knowable, what you know, and the fact that it's you who knows it, that's what's driving what you do. That's really helpful to understand. Hare Krishna. Okay, any other thought, comment?
It's interesting that it says, he who is free from egoism, and whose intelligence is not implicated in worldly action, even if he kills the entire world, he neither kills nor he is bound by action. That's very revolutionary.
It's a very extreme thing to hear and to read. And it's meant to illustrate the point. There's acting with, and this is, one of the things that's laid out in Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, is that ultimately what is causing reaction within the world is intention. What is your purpose? What's your intention for the thing that you're doing? If it's tinged with some type of selfish acquisition, then there's karma, right? If you have some mood of giving without any attachment, then the result that's happening is not touching you. And it's such a deep principle, and it's so hard to understand, and it's actually the truth. Right? It has to be contemplated. These things has to be contemplated. And sometimes very extreme things make you think about something. If you say something very extreme, then you have to actually ponder it, a little bit deeper. But the world, we see things in a certain way. But the world is happening. This entire universe is occurring. If you look at the Hubble telescope, it's just mind-blowing. There's a picture of two galaxies colliding. Can you imagine what is happening there? Each galaxy has hundreds and hundreds of billions, even trillions of stars, which means quadrillions and maybe septillions of planets. Okay, inconceivable amounts of stuff going on in those galaxies. And they're colliding. What is happening? This scale of destruction is practically inconceivable. And what's going to ultimately happen in however many billions of years is they're going to form one galaxy. Right? And things are going on. Suns are exploding. Those are supernovas. They're popping off all over this little galaxy we're in constantly. A supernova is an inconceivable event. You're talking about a sun exploding. For light years, everything's vaporized. Right? It's inconceivable. Okay? So there's stuff happening within the universe, and it's okay. It's okay. Right? That has to be contemplated. I'm alive right now. I have something to give. And I want to contribute. But everything's okay. Become big. You're a bigger person than you think you are. And you have to be a part of a universal consciousness. Not a very tiny, provincial, imprisoned consciousness. Hare Krishna. Okay. Jnanam karma cha karta cha tridhaiva guna bhedatah prochyate guna sankhyaane yathavastrinutanyabhi sarva bhuteshu yenaikam bhavam avyayamikshate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajjnanam vidhi sattvikam pritatvena tu yajjnanam nana bhavan pritak vidhan veti sarveshu bhuteshu tajjnanam vidhi rajasam.
In the Sankhya scripture, knowledge, action, and the performer have each been classified according to the three modes of material nature. Now hear these from me. That knowledge by which the one imperishable and undivided principle, my superior divine potency, is seen to be present in all the diverse living beings, is to be known as knowledge of the nature of goodness. That knowledge in which one experiences in the plane of living beings many separate, independent, entities engage in any separate clashing pursuits is to be known as knowledge of the nature of passion.
Maybe read 22 also, so we can have all three of these.
And that ideology, which is stubbornly attached to the peripheral only, considering it to be all in all, without a spiritual or scriptural conception, without seeking the truth, and based on trivialities alone, is said to be knowledge of the animalistic nature of ignorance.
Okay. Is that clear to everybody?
No, that was too much.
It's a lot. This is so compact, and I feel kind of bad because it's really a lot. But it's also wonderful. I mean, you can read one of these shlokas and you can read 1,000 pages of some German philosopher, and then you feel like, at the end of it, you just feel like, why am I existing? And you read one shloka of this and you're like, oh, okay, oh, right, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay. But it's very simple. Knowledge in the mode of goodness means you can see unity within everything. There's a unity and a harmony. You see everything as divine and everything is in motion, and there's unity and harmony. That's a perspective. That's a particular type of knowledge that exists in consciousness. Another person can look at the same world and see so many different warring parties, so many different ideologies, so many clashes, all these separate interests pursuing all their own different ways. That's viewing the world within the mode of passion. That's passionate consciousness. You're going to see many competing interests and so many individual agendas and everyone clashing. Okay? And you might see good and you see bad, right? You're seeing these different, classifying different sides according to your own particular viewpoint. One guy's looking at it and going like, we're good and you're bad. And then the other guys on the other side are like, we're good and you're bad. You know, that's all mode of passion, right? Then mode of ignorance is like the knowledge that you have just to like gratify yourself. And that's the extent of your thing. Somebody's talking about politics, you're just like, whatever, man, we're getting high tonight. You know, like you're not even caring about these warring factions. You're not thinking about these different ideologies or anything. You're just animalistically going, I want, gimme stuff. Or I want you, come here, you know, or whatever. Like that kind of knowledge, that's mode of ignorance. Okay. Then we can read 22, 23, 24, I think.
I think we did 22, right?
Yeah, we read it, but we didn't read the Sanskrit.
Oh.
So let's read the Sanskrit to 25, if we can. Okay, 22. Yattu kritsnavade kasmin karye saktam mahaitukam atat varthavad alpam cha tat tamasam udahritam niyatam sangarahitam aragadveshata kritam aphala prepsuna karma yatat sattvikam uchyate yattu kamepsuna karma sahankarena vapuna kriyate bahulayasam tad rajasam udahritam. And then we'll read 25 also. Anubandham kshayam hinsam anapeksha cha paurusham mohadarabhyate karma yattat tamasam uchyate. 23. That obligatory action which is faithfully executed without attachment by a person who does not seek its rewards and who is unbiased by likes and dislikes is said to be action of the nature of goodness. That action which is performed with great endeavor by an egotistic person desiring its fruits is said to be action of the nature of passion. And that work which is undertaken out of delusion, without consideration for its consequences, its loss, harm to others, and one's capability of performing it is called action of the nature of ignorance. Okay, clear? Very clear. Okay. (26). Then we can read 26, 27, and 28. Siddhya siddhyor nirvikara karta satvika uchyate ragi karma phala. Oh, sorry, mukta sango nahangvadi dhrityutsaha samanvita siddhya siddhyor nirvikara karta satvika uchyate ragi karma phala prepsu lubdho hingsatmako shuchihi harsha shokanvita karta rajasa parikirtitaha ayukta prakrita stabdha shatho naishkritiko lasa vishadi dirgha sutri cha karta tamasa uchyate.
And that work which is undertaken out of delusion without consideration for its consequences, its loss, harm to others, and one's capability of performing it is called action of the nature of ignorance. The worker who is unattached, without ego, patient, enthusiastic, and unaffected in success or failure is known as a worker of the nature of goodness. The worker who is attached, desirous of the fruits of action, covetous, cruel, engaged in
Abominable
practices not sanctioned by the scriptures and always subject to joy and sorrow is known as a worker of the nature of passion. And I have one more.
Yeah, 28.
The worker who is uncontrolled, vulgar, arrogant, deceitful, offensive, lazy, despondent, and a procrastinator is known as a worker of the nature of ignorance.
Oh, man.
What is the meaning of despondent?
What's that?
Despondent. What is the meaning of that?
Despondent means you become like depressed or super sad whenever something goes wrong. So, worker means a person who's doing something. If you're doing it unaffected in success or failure, you're always patient, enthusiastic, you're not attached. It's this wonderful state Krishna keeps referring to, where you use all of your talents, you happily give your energy, and you're not affected by whether that result that you want comes. That is like the state of goodness. And then there's a state that's completely consumed by the fruits. That's passion. And what happens when you have that desire that becomes super, super extreme, it causes anger. And Krishna went through this previously in the Gita. That the cause of anger is desire. When you have desire and it is unfulfilled, when you want something to happen and it doesn't happen, or you don't want something to happen and it does happen, and you're full of desire either way, you become angry. And when you become angry, then you can do cruel things. That's why Krishna says covetous and cruel. Your desire is driving you to harm others now. Right? Now, oh, that person got in the way. Arr! Right? You start to do bad, heavy things because you're full of your desire. And then there's like just a terrible, the passionate person though, they're working hard. The ignorant person, they're just not dependable, vulgar, lazy, and don't want to actually engage. Hare Krishna. Okay, 29. Buddhir bhedam driteshchaiva gunatastri vidham shrinu rochamanam asheshena Pritatvena dhananjaya pravritim cha nivritim cha karya karye vayavaye vandham moksham cha yaveti buddhi sa partha satviki. Maybe we can read 31 and 32 also. Yaya dharmam adharmam cha karyam karyameva cha ayathavat prajanati buddhi sa partha rajasi adharmam dharmam iti ya manyate tamasa vrita sarvarthan viparitamscha buddhi sa partha tamasi.
O Dhananjaya, now listen attentively. I shall clearly describe the three types of intelligence and determination according to the modes of nature. O Partha, intelligence of the nature of goodness is that which can distinguish virtuous engagement and abstinence from vice, duty and no duty, danger and safety, and bondage and liberation. O Partha, intelligence of the nature of passion is that which causes the erroneous perception of religion, irreligion, duty and non-duty. Intelligence of the nature of ignorance is covered by illusion, whereby vice is considered virtue and everything is taken to be the opposite of the reality.
That's so heavy. Okay, so intelligence of goodness can distinguish between good and bad, what should be done, what should not be done, what is dangerous, what is good.
Sorry.
That's all good. Passion, there's some errors. Because you're so driven by your own desire, you start to bend things according to how you want it. You read a scripture and you kind of pick out the passages that you like, and you're like, oh yeah, this one, yeah, this is totally backing me up, I'm right. Right? You start to make errors because you're driven by your own agenda. Okay, that's passion.
Yeah, I know one story like of my friend like who was like a kind of devotee. He actually the person who first in my life he gave me some prasadam, and his dad is like some Russian oligarch like living working with helicopter industry. And he was telling me like, yeah, my dad he has a Bhagavad-Gita on his like shelf, but it's all like marked like with some like things that he doesn't agree like.
Exactly. And then, I mean, intelligence of the nature of ignorance, very heavy. Where good is considered bad, bad is considered good. Everything is the exact opposite of what it really is. And you can live in that type of intelligence also. Hare Krishna. Okay. Then we'll talk about determination, which is dritya, dridhi. Okay, verse 33. Dhritya yaya dharayate mana pranindriya kriya yogena vyabhicharinya dhriti sa partha satviki yaya tu dharma karma kamarthan dhritya dharayate arjuna prasangena palakankshi dhriti sa partha rajasi. Then we'll read 35 as well. And then we'll stop. Yaya swapnam bhayam shokam vishadam madam evacha na vimunchati durmedha dhriti sa tamasi mata.
Thank you. O Partha, determination of the nature of goodness is that determination which unfailingly and with single-minded concentration controls the function of the mind. the life airs and the senses. O Partha, O Arjuna, determination of the nature of passion is that fruitive, attached determination which adheres to religiously for the purpose of amassing wealth to fulfill mundane desires. Determination of the nature of ignorance is that by which foolish person does not give up sleep, fear, sorrow, depression, and arrogance.
Wow. Wow. So helpful. Think about how rich this discussion is. All these dimensions of the mind, all these dimensions of consciousness, and how they can all be sorted. It's like very, very beautiful. John, ooh. So, determination, mode of goodness means, what is that saying? You control the functions of the mind, the life airs, and the senses. It means the determination by which you control yourself. That's mode of goodness determination. You control yourself. That's the real thing you need to control. And a master of yourself can be a master of anything, but you have to be a master of yourself first. And in Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, that's why he's a great king, because he's actually in control of himself. So then he can run the kingdom without prejudice. He has no agenda other than his own honesty. Then passion means you're going to be determined, you're going to follow the rules, but you're only going to follow the rules so that you can get what you want. And then determination and ignorance means you have problems, right? You're falling apart. You're covered by fear, covered by sorrow, depression, you're arrogant, you're lazy, whatever it is. And you determinedly hold on to being that. That takes a determination. You know, everyone, what's wonderful about this, and Krishna talks about this earlier, everyone has a sense of determination. And to do anything requires determination. And like, for example, if you have like a problem in yourself, like with anger or whatever, it's like, once you understand that you're the only one that can give that thing energy, then you're giving it energy. You're determinedly being that person again and again and again and again. And that's determination in the mode of ignorance.
But it's okay to feel anger, just not act on it. But it's okay to feel it, be in that energy.
The anger is a particular. There's a great chapter where Krishna goes through all of these different emotions that the mind feels, and where they go. Anger can have its higher side, but for the most part, you could say, for the most part, anger is coming from desire. That's what Krishna's saying. And it's a very interesting thing to hear that. For me, the first time it was very interesting. Okay, when I was a little kid and my sister pissed me off, I would, break a window or something, right? And I'm just like, I look back on that, it's just like, it's totally out of control. But like, you get mad and you just do stuff, right? And when I heard that anger is caused by desire, I was just like, what? No, it isn't. But it's very, very interesting. It's a very interesting thing to see what we're angry about. And I think that that's an internal journey. Why is that anger occurring? Because there's also a sense of experiencing that same situation, having a sense of discrimination between you. Maybe you're mad because something wrong is happening, or mad, whatever you're mad about in the circumstance, and like thinking inside yourself, why am I feeling this? What would make me not feel this? Right? Is there something there that's causing it? It is something that's that is an important part of spiritual life, actually. Is to really start to know that these things that are arising in you, there's a you that's higher than them. And they are under your control. If that makes any sense. Because sometimes we think a circumstance causes us to feel a certain way. Right? And of course we can justify that feeling. Right? It's like, yeah, a car almost hit me. Of course I'm scared. Right? Or whatever it is. Right? Like, but there is a journey that Krishna is outlining here where you're not controlled by those things. You're not subject to those things. You are, depending on where you go in your consciousness, you're impervious to those things. You're above those things. And it doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean that you're not a giving unit or whatever it might be, because sometimes maybe you're angry at an injustice or something, right? But that bigger picture of contribution without attachment, that has to be the governing principle. Because there is always a bigger picture that's happening, right? And you have to move into relationship with that bigger picture, not the small picture that we're in. Because there's very few people who can't justify what they're doing, right? Everybody has a story that justifies what they're doing. And when you have thousands and thousands of conflicting stories, how do you navigate that? Right? What Krishna's saying is there's a you who's above all of that. And there's a perspective on reality that's above all of that. And you can view that same circumstance completely differently. And so that's just something to be kind of like, I guess, taken in. I don't know how that's hitting you or anything, but it's something to be taken in and just kind of like, okay, is that true? Or I don't know how you're taking that, but it has to be like a mind, maybe is the word, like go in there like a miner and like dig into it and see what that is.
I see it as like, are you trying to say like the observer? Like,
Yes.
You're from a higher level observing these emotions within, and then, so the stories don't, because if you're not the observer, you're in it.
You're in it.
Right? And then it's all these stories come up,
And
and
then-
then you react.
Yeah, and then there's a question of who you are and how much your mind is controlling you, because there's one really beautiful shloka that Krishna says. He says, for someone who's in control of their mind is their best friend. For someone whose mind is in control of them, their mind can be their worst enemy. So this very subtle distinction between you and your mind is absolutely fresh for most people in the West. If your mind has an impulse in the West, there's no vocabulary to even talk about it as not being you. Whereas in the Vedic viewpoint, there's a you that's far more subtle and sophisticated than the mind. And you have to know that you, because that's the you that perpetuates. Right?
Can it be named like as a brain, like in the Western world? Like mind is like equals brain, like my brain. Like...
So maybe we can speak about it in Sanskrit, because again, this is one of those things where we're translating ideas here. So there's the senses. The senses are receivers of essentially wavelengths of energy. Okay? And they receive very, very limited wavelengths of energy. Like our eyes only receive and process a tiny, tiny sliver of the light spectrum. Okay? And with that tiny sliver, this world is populated. That's an interesting idea. We're experiencing a tiny sliver of what can even be seen. Okay? and we're caught up in it. Now there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that we don't see. Guess what? We're not caught up in it. Right? We're living in a teeny little sliver of what can be seen. Okay, of the light spectrum. It's the same thing. We live in a teeny sliver of what can be heard. Ultrasonic sound, subsonic sound. We have no access to it. We don't hear it. It's like it doesn't exist for us. For some things, it really exists, right? We don't even hear what a bat's hearing. They're like navigating the world by sound. For them, it's almost visual what sound is. For us, it's like we can hear this little teeny, little tiny bandwidth of what can be heard. Okay? And it's the same thing for every one of our senses. So our senses give us this tiny little sliver view of reality. And that's assuming that we have senses to actually perceive all the wavelengths of electromagnetic energy that are out there, which we don't at all. Okay? So there's probably all kinds of senses of experiencing reality that we don't have. Okay? So when you take that picture, we're in a body that's perceiving a little sliver of a giant chunk called reality. And because this body limits us to that perception, it's sometimes in the scriptures referred to as a prison. You're imprisoned in this little teeny sliver of reality. That's what you live in now. Okay? So now, that tiny little sliver that you perceive is now going to enter your mental system. Now, we know scientifically that most of it just gets downloaded. Most of it never even comes into your consciousness. Right? Even what your senses are picking up right now, it just gets downloaded. Okay? You never consciously perceive it. Your mind is just taking and picking out things that it thinks you need to perceive. Most of it's just getting downloaded. So now, even in that teeny little sliver that you live in, you're really living in a tiny little subset that your operating system is allowing you to consciously perceive. Right? And then you have problems with your senses. Okay? Your senses lie to you all the time. They've done all those tests where it's like you see that thing and one of it looks green, but it's not really green. It's actually the same color gray as the other thing. And you're like, well, why does it look green? And then they tell you how your mind is reflecting light. So then there's unreliability in that. And then you have a narrative that it all gets processed into. Okay? At every stage, there's unreliability. Okay? At every stage, at least, there's just a partial picture. Now, what's remarkable is that our consciousness has become completely consumed in that. Okay? That little tiny sliver of what is not fully reality and is only a tiny subset of what we even perceive and is going into our narrative. Right? It's like, it's not actually what's real. It's the world of our own perception and consciousness. Okay, so that's called senses and mind. The mind is the reflector of what's coming into the senses in the Vedic viewpoint. Okay, so you have senses, then mind. So think of it as a projection screen that actually gets through where your observer can experience it. Then there's a third layer called buddhi. Buddhi is the root of the word buddha, wisdom, enlightenment. Okay, buddhi means what knowledge, what wisdom do you have where you can navigate this? Okay, what are your principles? What is your understanding? What's your wisdom? And the senses, when they reflect something in the mind, the mind's kind of go, I like this, I don't like this. Sometimes it's said the mind is reflective of apathy and sympathy. I like it, I don't like it. I kind of want more of that, I kind of really don't want more of this. That's also unreliable. Okay? That's also unreliable. And you know that, we all know this in our life, where our mind is going like, I'm freaking tired now. That's enough. And then some deeper part of us, the wisdom goes, hey, shut up. We're going to keep doing this because I know it's good for where we're going. Right? That deeper part of you is called buddhi. Okay? And that can grow. Okay? So these different layers have to, and then there's something illuminating that whole system. And that's called Atma, or soul, Jiva. Okay, so most people don't know their soul at all. it's totally asleep, and you've got this sort of automaton DNA robot, you know, kind of going like, right? And it's like, that's what we're doing. Okay? So this is a path to self-enlightenment, to actually know all these things. And when you're reacting to these tiny little inputs that are completely that are totally incomplete, if that makes any sense, and like they're not reliable, and then we're kind of going like, yeah, right? We're just like, it's not reliable. It's not it's not the full picture. Okay, so there's this. That's the idea: is that you're moving up into wisdom, and ultimately to know who you really are, and have some sense of that connection to reality. Because you are part of that, that reality, that deeper soul. Right now in this body, we're interacting with this tiny little sliver and are swirling and caught up in it. But there's a much bigger thing that we're meant to accomplish. So I'm saying that just like so that there's a little picture where this idea of like you not being controlled by your anger lives within that. That you're reacting to a small picture and a small judgment of a small sliver of what's actually happening. Okay. All right. I think that's enough for today. So we're about halfway through the chapter, and this is still the kind of recap of what's been talked about. So, Jai Srimad Bhagavad-Gita Upanishad ki Jai. Om Vishnu Pashila Bhakti Rakshaka Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pashila Bhakti Sundar Govindra Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Rupana Guru Varga ki Jai. Kurukshetra Dham ki Jai. Arjuna, Krishna Arjuna ki Jai. And thank you all the devotees sacrificing their time tonight to read Gita ki Jai. Go Premanande Hari Bol. All right. You want to sing Hari Hari? We'll sing a song on page 60. Hari Haraye Namah Krishna Yadavaya Namah. Jai Mahaprasad ki
Jai.
And the people that cooked Mahaprasad for us tonight ki Jai. Damodar Prabhu ki Jai. Ananya Sundarji ki Jai.
We have some company tonight. Bhima Krishna Prabhu, Emily Stewart, which is his wife.
Ishta
She
Devika.
says, "Thank you for a wonderful class, Sudarshan. Dandavat to all."
Jai Ishta Devika.
A lot of devotees with us tonight. Jai to all of you. Ganga Leela, Lakshmi Priya, Madhava Priya Didi, Jai Krishna Das. Who are all of these devotees? I don't know.
That's why the internet is great.
Dandavat, Dandavat.
It's always tough when you read Gita because you could really just do like a whole thing on one verse. But at the same time, you lose track of the conversation if you do it that way because there's a direction it's all going and you can kind of lose track of that. So it's just always tough because it's a lot no matter what. Like every verse is just so full of so much meaning and truth.
Just yesterday we had this conversation with our friend of ours from MMA about 3 gunas. Tried to explain
It's very
he was,
that's
asking,
probably one of the hardest things to explain.
He was